Welcome, everybody. I would like to call the meeting of April 24th of the Board of Directors of MDX to order. Maria Luisa, could you please take roll? Oh, well, I better do the pledge first.
Yeah.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jimenez, Ms. Gutierrez, Mr. Martinez, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Walters, Treasurer Board, Secretary Wolf,
Here.
Vice Chair Edmondson, Chair Fano.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Maria Luisa. Okay, as far as the agenda goes, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda, Mr. Zaldivar?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, agenda as. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is?
Move.
Martinez, Ms. Gutierrez, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda approved. General Counsel.
Do any members of this board have to report any conflicts with any items on the agenda? Seeing none, we move forward.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on an item on the agenda. Seeing none, hearing none, I assume that there's none. Thank you very much. Okay, the approval of the summary minutes.
Move.
Martinez moves, second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Okay, we have two sets of meetings. We have the one
Board meeting on February 27th.
February 27th.
You moved it and seconded, so
All
we can
those in
take.
favor for the 27th?
Aye.
And then the special board meeting on March 6th.
Move. Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. And I just would like to make a mention of that meeting. And I know there was a couple of people, and there was even a note in the minutes that everybody was kind of unhappy with me. But at the end of the day, when the meeting for the 27th came, we couldn't have it because there wasn't a quorum.
Correct.
So I was happy, in retrospect, that we did have the meeting on the 6th. Just my point to share with you all. Thank you. Mr. Executive Director.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. What I'd like to do as part of my report is we prepared a video on the Kendall Parkway. We've been showing the community, and I'd like to show the board the short video now. And then I also invited Lourdes Gomez, who's the Deputy Director for RER, Regulatory Resource Economic Resources Department at Miami-Dade County, to make a presentation on the application for the CDMP of the Kendall Parkway. So what I'll do now is play the video real quick, and then I'll ask Lourdes to come up and give her presentation. Roll it.
Good morning, Miami. Well, maybe on the beach it's a beautiful morning, but go west. How about here and here?
West Kendall, it's really, really bad. People are, when it takes getting to work, maybe 40 minutes, right? It's taking them an hour and a half.
Just getting out of West Kendall every time, it's a good 45 minutes to travel 3-4 miles tops.
If you don't get out of here at 6:30 in the morning, you're not going to make it anywhere until after 9.
If you have an accident or something like that, you're stuck for an hour. I don't care what part of it you're on.
It'll take me 50 minutes to an hour just to get out of here and somewhere like 57th Avenue where I can actually take a street straight into Pearl Gables.
And when it's happy hour here, not so happy here. It becomes a real quality of life issue for the hundreds of thousands who live in West Dade and West Kendall. And it's a real challenge for the area's businesses and employers.
So many of our employees just really, after working a very long shift, get frustrated. Some physicians actually take a nap before they actually get in their cars, because from a safety standpoint, who wants to work 12 hours and then fall asleep because you're in bumper-to-bumper traffic for the next hour or so trying to get home?
It's become too obvious that traffic on the Turnpike and the Palmetto Expressway are pushed to the max, and the future success of the area as a place to live and work depends on finding new ways to get north or south to connect to 836 to go east at peak hours and all day long. After a long and all-encompassing engineering study of alternatives, MDX presents an idea whose time has come: the Kendall Parkway.
I'm standing here at the edge of West Kendall. About a mile behind me, we have Chrome Avenue. About 6 miles to the east of me, we have Florida's Turnpike. In between the two, we have a large amount of residents, a large amount of businesses that live and work in the area. We also have a lot of congestion. And what we're looking to do is create a 14-mile multimodal corridor along the edge of West Kendall to provide these businesses and these residences with better access, better connectivity, and to ultimately relieve congestion on the local roads and provide a better quality of life for the people that live and work in this area.
A new way of thinking that will help shorten the commute time for the almost 80% of the workers that commute outside the area. The design being considered will be in tune with a multimodal world and offer a combination of transit alternatives for the current residents of Kendall and the entire county. It will be truly transformational and give back the neighborhoods to the east that now see traffic coming through their local roads trying to beat the traffic. It would extend from where the Dolphin ends today at 137th Avenue and Northwest 12th Street and move west and south to about Southwest 136th Street. It will split the traffic between the Florida Turnpike and the Kendall Parkway, alleviating traffic on all east-west roads, from Bird Road to Killian. And it will create the ability of commuters out west to access 836 near 167th Avenue, potentially in 5 to 10 minutes.
Amazing. It's going to alleviate a lot of the traffic coming through my street here.
I'm all for it.
This is not just about creating another expressway. It's a game changer of access for people all over the county. The Kendall Parkway will have XT lanes for traffic to flow faster, and it will create a corridor for future express transit from the Dolphin Transit Station Park and Ride as envisioned in the county SMART plan. It will be a real alternative for evacuations for hurricane emergencies. The design allows this parkway to form a border protecting environmentally sensitive areas from urban sprawl. It even creates a unique buffer with the environment as a key part of the design.
You don't just make an expressway full of concrete everywhere. Expressway with greenery around it, you know, and different things where you're cooperating with the environment. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
If they can take an environmental approach to that, I think it's an awesome idea.
Adjacent to the Kendall Parkway, we will be looking to construct a linear park for its entire length that will provide pedestrian and cyclist access to the nature preserves that are being created along the area. So the 14.5-mile linear park that will be created along the facility will be a new area for individuals that live in West Kendall to cycle, to walk, to enjoy the weather in South Florida, and do it in a way that's protected, that's safe, uninterrupted by traffic, and it will really be a benefit to those individuals that live in the area and actually folks that visit the area as well.
It will offer more mobility options for an area in desperate need of relief. The plans are in place, and the need is there.
Think about the amount of time that people are spending in their cars rather than at home with their family.
The time is now. This will be a project that will improve the quality of life for the entire county. The Kendall Parkway.
Thank you, board members. Now I'd like to invite Lourdes Gomez. She is the Deputy Director of the Regulatory and Economic Resources Department, RER, and she is heading up the application on behalf of Miami-Dade County staff, and she'll be presenting exactly what's in the application and what are our next steps. So,
How do I just?
Just hit on slideshow, and you just hit spacebar. You can just hit spacebar.
Hit the spacebar. Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I have a bit of a presentation here for you, but I'm gonna, and I have hard copies that were distributed in front of you, but I'm gonna skip through some of this because I know you must be familiar with the parameters of the project. What I really wanted to focus on was to explain some of the policy attachments that we are placing on this application that have really made this a unique opportunity for the county to work with this agency in terms of creating what we consider to be, if these policies are adopted in their full form by our Board of County Commissioners, to be truly a unique backlog facility for this community that will really contribute to alleviating traffic congestion for the residents of West Kendall. This slide shows you the specific requests that's being made through our CDMP, which is to amend our land use plan map to include this expressway extension and amend the map series that has to do with transportation facilities in the county's comprehensive plan. This describes the footprint that you're familiar with. The alignment you're seeing here was not the original alignment that had been put forward with the application. That alignment is on this page. That original alignment, after having gone through some community council consideration, it went through 3 community councils. It also went through our planning advisory board at the county, which is our land planning agency. There were recommendations to adjust the alignment with respect to how it impacts our UEA, which is a planned area in the county, and I'll show you here. This area just south, and that's why you see the jog south and west in that blue line that came out of those recommendations that were discussed and entertained before those boards. Some of the reasons, again, for supporting the extension through our comprehensive plan is to address our roadway network capacity deficiencies and improve accessibilities. The staff recommendation is to transmit with change, meaning change incorporating the policies that I'm about to go through and ultimately adopt. There are a number of policies that approving the expressway extension with the capacity constraints that we are attaching to it support in our comprehensive plan, including these before you. There's safe and efficient management of traffic flow, protecting pedestrians, bicyclists, enhanced use of transit, and requiring that the roadway network, particularly in this part of the county, which is not in the infill exception area, to operate at the level of service at or better than the adopted standards. And probably the most important, 2 of the most important components of the policies that are being recommended have to do with the buffering that will be occurring as part of this project. There will be a requirement, there is a requirement in the policies that MDX contribute to the acquisition and preservation of wetlands within the Bird Drive Basin and the North Trail Basin, which are the areas north of Bird Road. That will create a huge buffer between the UDB and the proposed facility. In addition, it's been identified through the studies that MDX has conducted themselves to contribute to traffic relief, hurricane evacuation, and improved response times, particularly at peak hour for our own county fire rescue and police services. Probably the most unique element, aside from the preservation of the wetland areas, we also have a policy that's going to preserve in a commensurate manner that it is impacted the agricultural areas that are impacted in the southern piece of the alignment is the concurrency management policy that we will be adopting through this application. And what we're going to be doing is the county has a concurrency management system, and we also have a separate analysis of capacity, of level of service capacity in roadways. And so when a development comes through the zoning analysis and permitting approval analysis in the county, the staff reviews the impact that a specific proposal will have on the adjacent network. And through a future interlocal agreement, which we'll be proposing with the concurrence of MDX, we will be updating the traffic information associated with our concurrency management system so that we have the specific capacity, the new capacity that would be attributable to the highway. That commensurate relief on our existing network will be captured, it will be memorialized in our concurrency management system, and thereby is how we are ensuring that both inside and outside of the UDB, that capacity will not be available for new development. And that's a very key policy in terms of how it is that we are managing to treat this as a truly unique backlog facility for the community. And again, that's for the concurrency. There's another analysis that's probably less known, which is one that pertains to our comprehensive land use plan amendment process. And in that process, when a developer or a property owner is seeking to intensify a use, the capacity in the existing network contributes to that recommendation for approval or denial. That's a very specific analysis that's done within the planning agency, so that in concert with the concurrency management system is probably the two most important components of the traffic mitigation element of this project. This slide is just the summary of the recommendations that I had previously explained from the community councils and our planning advisory board. Our next steps, we were to have gone, we're scheduled for first reading tomorrow. However, the mayor has requested a continuance of that hearing. There were many, many concerns raised and comments at a town hall meeting that was held in the Kendall community with the district commissioner, Joe Martinez. There were over 300 residents in attendance. And so in order to give us time to work with MDX to incorporate their feedback, that request is being made tomorrow. If that motion is adopted, the new requested date is June 20th. And at that point in time, if our county commission votes to transmit the amendment, it will undergo the state review. That's approximately 30 days. And it's to come back to our Board of County Commissioners for the final adoption hearing, probably no earlier than September. That would be the soonest we could probably hear it after the review process, but sometime this fall it would be available for approval.
Madam Chair. Let me clarify something. While we are going to do this because of concerns, those concerns weren't opposition. Those concerns just wanted to realign the expressway from those folks that are on 167th Avenue to maybe give a little bit more buffer between them and the highway. And so, thank you for attending, and I know that the member Martinez was also in attendance. I would say that greater than 90% of the people that were there were in favor of this of the Parkway. Some of the people that were not in favor of the Parkway don't live in the area. May not even live in the county, all right? So, after Lourdes is done, I want to ask her a series of questions that are really, the questions are related to the misinformation that's being put out there by certain people, and it's gaining traction. So, part of the reason why we're doing this is so that we can inform you about our policies, how this expressway, this parkway is really going to be protecting the UDB, et cetera. And so, again, it's so that when we go out, we can explain it, because people are going to be asking you asking you these questions, asserting certain things that are factually false. And I believe maliciously so, all right? Because there really isn't very much of an argument on this particular parkway against the Parkway unless you try to muddy the waters with misinformation. And so I want to make sure that we understand exactly what it is that this application says, so that when we go out, we can explain it. And we do need to go out, and I will be definitely going out and explaining this application. And then also, we need to take into consideration what those residents said, and actually some very good recommendations by those residents that we want to incorporate as we go through till June 20th. Sorry, Lourdes, go ahead, continue.
Oh, actually, I was done, and that's absolutely correct. The request that the overwhelming statement that was made by the residents was to move the alignment further west. That was well commented on, in addition to support for the preservation components of the application and the capacity restraining element of the application, because there were concerns that it would just, add to more traffic. So we've done our best to really ensure that there is not an ability to have, the highway become, an inducement for, any more congestion.
Madam Chair, if I could ask her some questions, if I could just ask her the series of questions, and then therefore, I can kind of lead you into what some of the opposition is saying. All right.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. Lourdes, does this application move the UDB?
No, this application is specifically for a facility approval. It is not a land use amendment. And actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's been a misnomer. Typically, in our process at the county for amendments to the UDB, it's a 9-vote requirement. And the reason that this is a 7-vote requirement is because it is a facility application. It is not a land use amendment.
Do we have roads outside the UDB?
We do.
Can this road be used to increase development inside the UDB?
No, not if it is adopted with the policy constraints that have been proposed. MDX provided in their traffic analysis a very broad study area, and so what we're proposing, and that's why I tried to explain in a little more detail the concurrency and the capacity analysis that we do within the scope of that study area, and I don't recall the exact street dimensions, but it goes almost to the Palmetto and west. You want to?
Correct. It goes all the way from east of the Turnpike, Don Shula Expressway, all the way west to the Chrome Avenue.
Okay.
And then south, all the way south of 152nd, all the way north to Northwest 12th.
So within that entire area, we have stations, they're traffic analysis zones. Some of them are state roads, some of them are county roads, and we maintain annual counts in cooperation with information that we get from the state of the traffic counts at those particular locations. So what we will do through the interlocal agreement is get within opening year, get the most recent traffic counts, get the traffic analysis from MDX, and then incorporate that nexus into our concurrency system so that the capacity caused by the highway is not available. It's reserved. So that's not available for further development needs.
So in essence, what somebody could build today, they can build after the road is built no matter what, but they really can't use the road to say, let's say I have the ability to have 500 units somewhere, but they can't really use the new capacity of the road to say, well, now I want to build 800 units. Is that correct?
Well, certainly, yes. I mean, to the extent that they would, to the extent that proposal would cause a failure of a level of service on any particular roadway, yes, they would not be able to avail themselves of the capacity of the highway. But more important than that, I mean, and I don't want to get into the dregs of planning, but really, when there's an analysis of a change in land use, capacity is a threshold question, and it is a threshold question in the consideration of moving the UDB. So we have a staff, a planning research arm in the department that is dedicated to maintaining current analyses of residential capacity, industrial capacity, business and office, commercial. They do that analysis and keep it current, and they closely scrutinize all proposals that, bring any kind of intensification or change in use against those current figures. And I mean, I guess for me, the concurrency issue is a tangible manifestation of the capacity restraint, but for us, that capacity restriction, when a property owner is seeking to intensify their land use, that's perhaps even more important with respect to triggering movement of the UDB.
Now, today, anybody, and we have applications all the time that try to move the UDB.
Yes.
Right? Now, I guess what you're saying is that any future application that tries to move the UDB, if this parkway is built, the staff will not look at the capacity of the parkway in order to determine the viability of moving the UDB.
Right.
That's correct?
Yes, they would not be able to avail themselves of that capacity.
So basically, the highway is invisible when it comes to moving the UDB. The highway has no bearing on whether the UDB will be moved or not. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If it is adopted with the policy constraints we've written in, absolutely.
So the only people that can move the UDB is a vote of 2/3 of the county commission?
Yes.
Now and in the future?
Yes.
And that road will not be used in any way, shape, or form for concurrency or capacity to move the UDB?
No.
Okay. The other thing is, and maybe this is to Javier, how many acres are we purchasing in order to and put in conservation?
Based on the analysis we've done in the typical section, we're looking at about 1,000 acres that would need to be purchased in the Bird Drive Basin, to mitigate on-site, which is one of the conditions in the application itself.
Okay, and so we're also looking to put 14 miles of bike paths. We're also looking to put a linear park.
Correct.
And Madam Chair, one of the things that we're looking at too is two very good suggestions. I think that when the people on 167th were talking and people living close to 167th were talking, they weren't talking about moving it all the way out to Chrome. I think they were just saying, hey, we need a little bit more buffer, all right? So anybody who's fearful that somehow this is all going to go out to Chrome, actually I would fight that because what we're trying to do is make this a reliever road. You can't push it all the way out to Chrome and expect a lot of people to go west of Chrome and then to come back. So the closer we stay, but not that close to those properties and the homes, the better. We're obviously going to do a lot of mitigation and buffering with landscaping, et cetera, to make sure that on that portion of 167th, where it may be as close as it's going to get to the residents, that we reduce the noise as much as possible, that we reduce any of the visual clutter that as much as possible. Something else that was what was false was some folks had said that on 100 on the area where it actually got close to as close to the people on 167th or residences, that somehow this road was going to be elevated. That's not true either.
No.
It's going to be it's going to be at ground level. A great suggestion was building a park, a major park for in the area between the homes and the roadway. And I think that's a great idea, that we can actually accumulate some land and then basically turn it over to the county, so that right now a lot of these folks, they have to go to Tropical or they have to go to Tamiami in order to have a major park. They can have it right there, again reducing traffic. So we're going to make those changes and put it forward, and then on June 20th, we need everybody now on this board that supports this project to, when asked, so you know the truth, not what folks are saying to put fear into people, which to me is unconscionable. There's 600,000 people live there. 600,000 people live there, and their quality of life is unbelievably negatively impacted by the amount of traffic, and this road needs to be built, and it needs to, the sooner the better. So any other questions you may have, either I or Lourdes can answer, but we really need to get this road going.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Both for the clarification, I think some other people had some.
If I may. clarify one last thing as that it pertains to this board. One of the issues that the community was being told was that somehow building this project was taking away from funding the SMART plan, and that we were competing for the same monies from the state, the federal government, or the county. And we clarified that every penny for this project comes from the tolls collected on our system, and that in fact, the tolls on the current system of MDX will not need to be raised to be able to finance this project. So that was another misconception that was out in the community.
In fact, this plan actually enhances the SMART plan, because we can put bus rapid transit right away, and we also, part of the plan is to buy right away so that in the future there's a train, the right of way is already there.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Walters, then Mr. Martinez.
Understand the real reason. You know, many years ago, Maurice Ferre told me that in Miami-Dade County, there's two reasons things happen. There's the good reason and the real reason. And I hear people talking about their fear of moving the urban development boundary. Well, I can't remember the last time the urban development boundary was moved in any substantial manner. It's been tweaked a little bit. Beacon Lakes is about the last project that I can remember, and that's got to be 15 years ago. So this concern that the urban development boundary is somehow going to be compromised, that can't be the real reason. Do you have any feel for what's going on?
I think actually that argument is an insult to the commission, because it's saying that, well, once you build this road, you will be compelled to move the UDB. Basically, he's telling the commission that, yeah, you can't help yourself. Once you build this road, you're going to have to move the UDB because you're going to be pressured. But, you know, when we wrote the policy, it was, you know, believe me, when I sat down with Lourdes, okay, what are the environmental concerns? What are going to be the arguments against that road? And we could see what it was. It's going to move the UDB. Well, you can't use it for concurrency. You can't use it for capacity. It's a reliever road. That's the only thing it is. You're not moving the UDB. You still have to have a 2/3 vote of the commission in order to move the UDB. And so, what's the real reason? There are some folks that are, you know, citizens against virtually everything. Okay. And the real reason is, I believe, one of the first meetings I had was with Friends of the Everglades, who said that this somehow was going to disrupt the Everglades. And so I asked, well, there's a 4-lane highway like a mile to the west of this. How is this roadway going to disrupt the Everglades more than the 4-lane highway that's already to the west of this? That's the last I've heard of that young lady. She had a good question, but didn't have a response for that. No matter what we said during those meetings, you cannot convince them. It's almost to the point where it's, you know, one of the alternatives was to use the FPL right away and run a train down 127th Avenue. Okay, and then what? So I got a train on 127th Avenue. So where's it going to go? Up and down 127th Avenue. Which again, this is not really viable. And here's the other thing too. They're trying to plant the seed and the argument that somehow when you do this, that's it. We're done. Okay? And I keep telling them this is not it's not the solution. It's a solution. And that this actually will enhance public transportation, mass transit. But you have to understand that no matter how much of the SMART plan that we implement, people are still going to be in their cars. And more than 95% of the people are going to be in their cars. And so we need to give some relief. But we need to give the relief in an environmentally sensitive way, also that it doesn't conflict with our comp plan, that it keeps the integrity of the urban development boundary. And so to put as much to rest of those arguments as possible. And I think we put all of them to rest, except they just won't believe it. That's all. They just don't think that we can hold the line once we build the road.
Thank you. Mr. Walters, anything else? Mr. Martinez.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the mayor and Mr. Rodriguez for basically answering all the questions I was initially asked. But one of the things I think is very important to note is I was at the town hall in West Dade in West Kendall, and it was without question between 90 to 95%, if not more. The mayor and I debated. I thought it was 90%. He thought it was actually higher than that. Was overwhelmingly not only in support of the project, but literally begging for this project to be built. And I would encourage all of my fellow board members to go to a town hall, listen to the men and women who live up in West Kendall, not to those, with all due respect to other members of our community who live in Coral Gables, who live in Brickell, and live in Coconut Grove, who are concerned about the UBD line, which is an important issue. But think about that to those who are, those 600,000 residents up there that are asking for this support. It was really remarkable. I went in there with an expectation of a higher amount of opposition. I will perfectly be honest with you, based on what I've seen, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Rodriguez, at City Hall. When this has been debated in town at the government center, there seems to be a more even division among supporters. Those who live up there, it's not even close. This is like 90, 95% in support. You know, small percentage might not like it. Even those who are in disagreement, there are more issues about the alignment than actually against it. So I encourage our board members, go up there, listen to the men and women who are living in this situation, and listen to how seriously they really want this to go. And the misnomer that we're going to be taking county, state, or federal funding away from the SMART plan is just simply not true. We have never competed with the county for any federal or state funding. In fact, the opposite. We've always worked in cooperation with the county to obtain as much funding as we can, because we understand that this isn't the only project. So I can't emphasize how, you know, I have family that live up that way. I have friends that live up that way. I cannot emphasize how important this project can be. It's not the answer. It's one of the steps to get a better situation up there. And I think it's important that the truth be told. You agree with it or not, but let's make sure the facts are correct.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lourdes, for the presentation. It's
Yes.
it's good to learn all the facts and to know exactly what is really going on and what we're discussing. I have a two-tier question. There's been two alignments that was being presented at all the meetings, but now there is a third preferred alternative
Actually, if I can clarify
with the
that.
buffers, and that's what I want to.
Actually, if I can clarify it, there's one alignment with two options south of 104th Street. That's what's on the table. This issue of 167th Avenue is simply the area between Bird Road and Sunset Drive. We were about 450 feet away from 167th Avenue, and what the community felt is that if we can move it a little bit further west and create a bigger buffer in that area, they would be satisfied. And the questions were asked, and they said it. We can't go all the way to Chrome anyways because the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan has a half-a-mile buffer from Chrome Avenue. So really what we're looking at is 172 Avenue to 167 Avenue. That's 2,460 feet.
Okay.
So in that area, all they're asking us to do is move it over a little bit, and that's what we're looking at.
And when you say that's what we're looking at, let's focus on exactly that. Is that the current alignment picture that we're all going to see and that's going to go before the hearing?
By the time June 20th comes around, if that is the will of the commission tomorrow, that is what will be shown to the commission as the compromise with the community, that we listened to them and we shifted the alignment, and that's what will be in the documents.
Because that should be the way that we should be considering this moving forward.
And
that we hear them, that we respect that they don't want it directly in their backyard. We want their support because this is a positive. This is to help alleviate the current non-access, only one choice in and out. This is the positive going into their community. I think that we need to consider that alignment and have it in place, and any new information going out to the community, that it includes and it depicts and it says precisely how we've taken in their information and how we are going to go about in doing it.
Board members, and I think Ms. Gutierrez was looking at my notes, but just kidding. This is actually a parallel process. The CDMP amendment process, which is something that the county commission and only the county can administer, is going parallel with the NEPA process, which is the environmental evaluation process that MDX is doing for the project. So you're absolutely correct. We're going to have a public hearing with the community because, to me, that meeting that we had last week, the town hall, was another community meeting, listening to their comments. And it's been something that's been going on since 2014. I'll be able to go to a public hearing showing them that we responded, and it's also going to be reflected in the CDMP application. So they'll hear that all of us listen to them.
So in
it
other
is-
words, what you're saying to me is that by the time that we go to the hearing in June, all of this input will be realized, and that's what we're going to be
Yes,
questioning.
yes,
That's the application that we will then be submitting.
yes.
Okay, so any fear that we're not considering their thoughts, their requests, we can void, that we are going that way. Okay, very good. I have that clarification. And then number two, when do we plan on the timeline on discussing the financial model?
Actually, again, number 5 on my comments, on May 22nd, we have our budget workshop at 9:30 in the morning, and right after the budget workshop, we have our committee meeting. At that committee meeting, staff is going to present a preliminary finance plan and proposed toll rates for the Kendall Parkway for your discussion. Based on the board's concurrence, we also have to go to the community and explain it to the community before taking a final vote on toll rates. So there's a whole process that we have to follow.
Follow-up, go ahead. One more follow-up question to that. Are we then, is staff also going to be considering, we already heard that it has a linear park area, the 14-mile stretch, but are we also considering that park that the mayor mentioned?
That is one of the comments that came out of the meeting on Thursday of last week, and that is something we're considering to incorporate as a project element in that section between
that-
Bird Road and
So then
Sunset.
in May, when we discuss it,
Absolutely.
we're going to at least have a ballpark of what that park may cost.
Absolutely.
And how we get to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple comments and a question. I actually, ironically, I hope my boss isn't watching or listening, but I played a little hooky this morning. I had to run to Home Depot. So I live on Kendall and 103rd. I know. So I went to 137th, and I actually texted my wife. I Wazed it from 137th, where friends of ours live, and it would take her 48 minutes to get to work at 7:45 in the morning. And she works in South Miami, and from our house, because we are in between both the Turnpike and the 874, our access is much greater to be able to utilize the expressway system. It's roughly 15 to 18 minutes. Providing another outlet for those residents, again, it couldn't be more stated from, I think, the 90 to 95% support of those individuals out there. And I also took some time, I met with HNTB and Albert and his team, as well as Victor Dover and the folks that presented the 750 plan here last meeting, to get an understanding and a perspective from both sides, because at the end of the day, if this does come to us, we have to make a decision and vote. And so I thought that that was important. And it did seem the biggest concern was the UDB. And only because of social media, which I'll bring up in a moment, did I read your article from the Herald. Obviously, as a millennial, I access information a little bit differently. And that was one of the myths that you debunked. And I think that's been the biggest challenge, is that quote-unquote fake news that may be out there. So one recommendation, the video that you played, as well as the myths that you provided, if we could get that in a format that we can share, I think, share on social media, that would be a great avenue to help this process. And then the question, so the commission essentially votes on this approval of the CDMP, correct?
Yes.
For the Kendall Parkway. So you mentioned some of the opposition. We're talking about residents, whether it's Broward County, Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach County, residents at these forums that are for it or against it. The individual residents in that community, if they voted, they would vote unanimously to do it. So it's not like you can have the residents call their local county commissioner to tell their elected commissioner to go ahead and vote to approve this, because you have, how many are outside? 7 commissioners or that aren't affected?
13. There's 13. The scope of this project actually runs on one commissioner, which is Commissioner Joe Martinez.
Gotcha. So
it runs in his district.
So I can only imagine that that's a greater challenge, because you have commissioners that their residents aren't affected. They're not getting calls by their residents to support it. So all they're hearing is those that are against it, that were, again, wherever they may live. How are we trying to inform and educate the commission as to this plan, the positives, negatives, pros, cons, so on and so forth?
I have gone around and met with almost all of the commissioners. In fact, one of my staff members today, right now, is meeting with a commissioner in District 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Commissioner Edmondson.
I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. One, the first map goes further west. The second map further east. Which one is it?
Right now, the alignment that was before the board as the preferred alignment was the one that goes a little further west, that bulbs out at the end. As a matter of fact, when the board has the hearing, it really is up for grabs in the sense of, should adjustments be required? Those are motions and amendments that can be made for the board, in full disclosure. But the analysis, the map that's being presented are the two that I showed you here in this large graphic.
Did I miss something? Did you explain to us why one map goes further west and the other is east? Which one is MDX recommending?
The initial submittal was for the one that was closer to the UDB, the one that went further east. In consideration of the recommendations that were made at the Community Council.
This one was a recommendation.
Yeah, and the Planning Advisory Board, they made amendments that requested that we consider the urban expansion area, which is that area south of Kendall Drive. And so that bulb out was the one that was presented as the preferred alignment under Commissioner Joe Martinez's sponsorship in front of the board.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold my comments until I go before the BCC, because I still have a lot of concerns on this, and I think everyone knows it. And I'll see how it turns out. Maybe our director can, but I'm afraid to talk to him because everything I say to him gets out.
There was a lot of people in our meeting, Commissioner.
Well, I have to be careful.
Madam Chair?
Done?
No, I'm not done, but the mayor wants to speak, so let him
But
speak.
you were speaking. You have the floor, ma'am.
I just want to know why we're going further west. And what's the justification for going further west?
I think I stumped this thing. Okay.
That's why I said I'll hold it.
I have the hard copy. I can just.
Maybe I
refer
can answer
you-
that? Let me answer because actually she works for me, okay?
The-
So, she works for me, so I can answer the question.
Yeah.
The original application we had was further east. At the request of, I think, one of the community councils, they asked that we consider it going west because there is now an evaluation of the urban expansion area. Also, Commissioner Martinez had requested that we consider that. But when it comes to the commission, there's pretty much an agreement as to all the way down to 104th Street. It's from 104th Street down to 136, that there would be, that the commission will decide which one, east or west. And so that's why we put that. And the commission will make the final determination if it decides to transmit which one it can, or actually it can transmit both and get information back from the state on both alignments before making the final determination of what the final alignment would be. So the first hearing is just basically is to try to get it to transmit to the state to get their comments, and then it'll come for final vote for the commission, and then the commission decides which alignment it wants to choose in the end. But again, up to 104th Street, it's pretty much what you see, and then you have the two options south of 104th Street down to 136.
Okay, and 104th Street is Killian Parkway?
Yes. Yes.
I think if this board is going to make some sort of recommendation to the county commission, there should be something in reference to the bulge, as the mayor put it. Because if the MDX is recommending further east, then they need to recommend further east.
That's what we did.
So when it goes to the BCC, that needs to be explained.
We will do that.
Okay, because I'm having a hard time with this. Everyone knows that for years I have been very consistent. I know this really is not moving the line per se, but it is going outside of the line.
Yes.
And I'm still one of those, and no one spoke to me or can convince me, but in the future, it can encourage development outside of the UDB, which means moving it. So, Madam Chair, that's my feelings on this.
Thank you.
I have a lot more, but I'll keep them to myself right now.
So I have a question, if I may, to the mayor and to Ms. Gomez. Do you take into consideration the feedback that you get from the residents?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we are, moving this hopefully to June the 20th, because we need to incorporate some of, a number of the concerns of the residents, especially the ones on 167th. They just don't want it that close. Also, how we can incorporate a park, and I think those were the two major issues with the residents. Even while they were saying that these are our concerns, they said, well, we want this, we need this. There was overwhelming support for this project. And one other thing that I want to put on the record is, while there may have been people, and very few people actually came from out of the district that may have been against it, there's a ton of people that are also in Coral Gables and Coconut Grove, and they're for this project. But it's going to be difficult to get those people that are for this project to go out and say they're for this project. Because we all move around this town, and we know how hard it is to get out west. And so for me, as somebody who has family members and friends out west, I know how difficult it is to get out here. So it's affecting actually my quality of life too. Because it takes me an hour or so to get out here and then an hour to go back. That affects my quality of life, even though I don't live here. And so, I don't buy the argument that everybody that lives a certain place is against this. Frankly, I think most of the people, if you ask them and you explain it to them and you debunk the theory about the UDB, they say, yeah, fine. It seems logical to me.
Mr. Mayor, I had never implied that the majority of people west of Kendall were against it. I implied that many who come to the county commission meeting who complain about the UBD line in this generally don't live in the area or enduring it. Those are the people who squeaky wheel gets the oil, is the basic saying there. Quite to the contrary, I don't live anywhere near West Kendall, and I'm completely in support of it, and so does the overwhelming majority of my family.
It wasn't a reaction to, it was a reaction to what you said, but not implying that you had said that. I just wanted to put what I feel. Sure. Because I live in Coconut Grove, right? And what I feel, okay? And my sense is that the people in my area are not against this. Once you advise them that they have been misled and misinformed.
I agree.
Any other board members? Mr. Meyer?
One last question, actually. It's with respect to the park. I think that's a phenomenal idea. In fact, and was curious, because I actually, on my business side, pursued the Tamiami Airport Park P3 twice in the last 8 years. And I noticed one goes actually adjacent to it, and the other seems like it goes through that portion of land. Is there a thought to utilize those concepts as well and put a park there? Has that been discussed?
I don't think any specifics have been discussed, Board Member Meyer. I think the way I took it, based on the public input, was the area between Bird Road and Sunset Drive adjacent to 167th, somehow create a bigger buffer, and if it could be called a park, it would be beneficial to the community.
Okay.
And that's all we limited it to, that I heard.
Thank you.
Ms. Gomez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you so very much for the healthy discussion. I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic project, and I understand that a portion of the project is going to transverse sensitive wetlands. Thank you for explaining the policy changes, because I think that's very important that are included in this application. And to that end, I want to throw something out for everybody's consideration. I've been reading a lot about an icon in environmentalism, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I understand her passion for the Everglades and its restorations. Colleagues, would it be possible for consideration to maybe name the Kendall Parkway after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas for this historical conservationalist, or maybe the park, or maybe the mitigation area that will become a conservation area? So I'd like to open that for discussion if possible, please.
One of those things, I think that it would be actually a little premature right now to discuss that. And I don't want to get into a debate about that let's talk about the merits of the Parkway, and then if we decide to call the Parkway something else later after it's built, then I think that's fine, or as it's being built is fine, but not before it actually gets approved. I would feel uncomfortable about that.
I put it for discussion. Ms. Gutierrez?
But I think what you're referring to is the park and the linear, not necessarily the expressway. Yeah. So if those are
As
the
an
items,
honor,
yeah.
because it's
So
so
if
close
those,
to-
I think that, as we move forward, it's a great idea to discuss it, but I think later something else is going to come up, and I think I was going to reserve the conversation for May 22nd. Who owns that park? Because I think that we're buying the land, but we've got to turn it over to Miami-Dade County. So as we turn it over, I think that they're the ones that get to name it. You see what I mean?
I understand,
So
but
to me, that was, the pickle that we were going to find ourselves in with that park. I would endorse a park. I would love a park. I think it's a great idea because the community deserves a wonderful park in that area. Green space is wonderful, but I think that at the same time, those things have to be worked out. Who's going to maintain? Who's going to, who's going to keep up that park on the way that it needs to be, in the excellence of way that Parks and Recreation currently in Miami-Dade maintains their parks.
in honor of Earth Day that was Sunday, I'm all about planting seeds.
Yeah.
Some grow, some don't. It's okay with that.
So I think
just like
part
being
of
a
the
farmer.
opening for this, the first kick of the opening of the ground, that's assuming that everything is a yes. Maybe it's planting the first tree.
I like that, planting the seed. You planted it. I agree with the mayor. We don't always agree on everything, but I definitely agree with him on this.
I like that. I like that very much. So it served my purpose.
And with the park discussion, I like that idea as well. That came up at the community meeting, and I'd already heard about it. So I look forward to seeing some park out there someday. That would be nice if and when everything gets done, but this is the wrong time for us to discuss something like that. We have one big hurdle that you all have to jump over. So we need to jump that one first and see where that goes before we start talking about naming something. It is a lucky number. Who knows?
You have to focus on 7.
Yes, so you have to focus on that. So you all will start focusing on that, and maybe somebody can have a meeting with me and get me to change, who knows?
I'll go alone.
You come along?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's a great idea, Mr. Thank you again, Ms. Gomez. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lourdes.
Board members, any other comments, questions? Okay, moving right along.
Chair, I have 2 more items really quick to conclude my report. Two issues. As everybody knows, when the bridge collapsed on FIU, and this is an issue just to inform the board, I think all of you got the letter. We lifted tolls at 107th Avenue and 836 to assist in the circulation of traffic during the closure of Tamiami Trail. It was minimal impact to our revenues, and it was the right thing to do. I think what I wanted to update the board on is on 83611. From our perspective, that's our project number. The bigger project in context is a signature bridge, I-395. There was a voluntary dismissal of the protest by the protesting group of Floor joint venture. I know the Department of Transportation now is working on a schedule to move forward. MDX obviously has a portion of that project from 17th Avenue to I-95. I bring that up because at the meeting, folks at the community meeting wanted to make sure that when you get on 836, there's no bottlenecks on 836, and I think the last remaining bottleneck will be east of 17th Avenue. With the advent of this project moving forward, with the potential of the double deck that was proposed, that increases the capacity getting to 95 and to the downtown and the beach, I think it's going to be a benefit for the flow of 836. So stay tuned as that project moves forward. With that, I conclude my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Rodriguez. General Counsel.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Before I talk about the two items I have, I'd like to, for the record, Commissioner Edmondson, Mayor Jimenez, do you have any conflicts with any items on the agenda?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. The first item that I have is shade meeting request for ETCC litigation. For the record, pursuant to Florida Statute 286.0118 subsection A, an attorney for an agency needs to advise the board that they desire advice regarding pending litigation. Pursuant to the statute, I'm therefore announcing that I require advice regarding the case ETCC versus Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. This meeting will take place during the next board meeting, which is scheduled for May 29, 2018. The individuals that can be present is the attorney for the agency, which is myself and Francine Stillman, a court reporter whose name has not been determined, outside counsel, which would be Judge Rudolfo Serrando, Joseph Sirota, Eric Hockman, and Michael Ernstein. Javier Rodriguez is the executive director, and all board members present for the meeting. The second item, just to advise you that the next steps for legislation. Next month, I and Javier will be presenting staff's recommendations for the next, to address House Bill 141 and 149. Prior to the board meeting, we plan to meet with each individual board member and discuss it individually and answer any questions that you may have. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saldira.
Madam Chair, what are those bills?
Pardon me?
What are those bills?
House Bill 1049 was what we referred to last year as what the legislation that was passed. And then House Bill 141 is the one that was signed by did I lose you? Governor Scott maybe a couple weeks ago.
Governor Scott signs a lot of things. What did they say? Yeah, what are they? What are the bills?
We had it in the board agenda last month.
House Bill 141 requires the Board of Directors to reduce toll rates 5%. If they don't, the board is replaced in its entirety. No standing board member can be reappointed except for the district secretary. It also requires us to submit a report to the governor on how we're complying with 1049, which passed last year. So what Carlos was mentioning is that we've already engaged our legal team and our consultants. We are preparing a report. We're going to bring it to the board and seek further. One of the biggest issues that we have is we have to clear our bond opinion. Right now, there's a cloud over our bond, as the bond counsel stated at the last board meeting. So we need to clear it. There's a couple of ways we can pursue that. One is legislative, one is legal. And I think what we want to do is present to you the report, present to you how we're complying or what we've done to comply, and then seek your advice on moving forward. And we'll have the entire team here to seek that advice. The report to the governor is due by October 1st. I fully expect to be able to submit it prior to that. In fact, prior to the fiscal year. It's pretty much prepared.
Any questions, any comments?
I have a question. By when do we have to take action, or else we may face removal?
October 1st, the report is due at the governor's office.
Okay.
Commissioner Edmondson?
You said the report has to be in by October 1st, correct?
That is correct.
And right now, we're facing a slight problem with our bond ratings.
That's correct.
Means that the bond ratings will remain where it is until around October 1st, or whenever we decide to.
Bond ratings are out of my league. I guess I would, but the problem that we have is that we cannot receive a clean bond opinion. Louis Ryder, who's our bond counsel, came in and discussed that, and the problem is he cannot give us a clean bond opinion. And with that, they're basically unmarketable.
You will recall, Mayor, and I'm sorry, that was why we had the meeting on March 6th. That was one of the reasons so that we could discuss this, because it was an emergency meeting, just to let you know what that was about.
Okay, well, I wasn't in that meeting, so.
Sorry.
I need to find out now.
Okay.
There's a summary in the summary minutes.
I'm sorry, say that again?
There's summary in the summary minutes of what
occurred.
Yes, what occurred, but Mr. Ryder's opined on the bonds.
Okay, but I still would like to know,
Yes.
until we decide to do something, will the bond ratings remain where they are?
Yes, they will. They're not going to be reduced. We have a surveillance every year. We have to do a voluntary disclosure as is required. I think the issue is when we go to the market again, what will the market's response be? And as we stand right now, we believe that without a clean opinion of bond counsel, we will have a challenge issuing debt. So prior to us going to the market again, we're going to have to cure it. We don't have to go to the market prior to October 1st, Commissioner, or Vice Chair. So we want to bring to you the report. We want to bring to you all the issues. We want to bring to you our recommendation and seek your concurrence or modification on how to proceed. We can either go the legal route or the legislative route. I think both are viable. We will present that to you at the next meeting.
At the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Would give a briefing to the vice chair, it would be wonderful.
Yes, we're actually going to go to every board member and give a briefing on the individual because we have the report prior to the next meeting.
Thank you. Board, your report.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, I would like for everybody to review the documents that we have included in the package in which the budget is there, and remind everybody that if we took the picture in October of last year, after our September 10th Hurricane Irma, our net revenues were down below budget for the amount of about $5 million. And today, the net revenues versus the actual versus the budget is over the budget by about $8 million. So we have not only recovered from the net $5 million that we had negative, but we are $8 million over the budget. A couple of the reasons for that, the executive director and the finance department expressed that more usage is taking place. There are more transactions happening, so more people are on the roads. We've made more money on the interest side than we projected. We didn't anticipate the net income that we were going to derive from interest. And we have caught up with the toll system, with collections from the tolls that we collect from images. And that has also, in the month of March, generated a $2 million increase in the variance. If you look at the first top line, where it has net revenues of 25 versus budget of 20, that variance is collecting the catch-up that we had with the image system. So we were a little bit behind, but overall, it still is an impressive pickup in terms of net revenues. And then this is a good treasurer's report in the sense that we have more money on the revenue side and we have spent less money on the expense side. And there are two significant areas. The total net savings versus the budget are about $1.6 million. And primarily, they're on operations. Both operations on the toll side and operations on the roadway side generate about 80% of the net savings versus the budget. And we're getting towards the end of the year, so these aren't timing variances. These are just going to stand the test of time as we get probably to the end of year. So that's the report from the budget side. I would also remind everybody that the Finance Department, and we have issued the budget for next year, and that you all have it in your inboxes, and that we will be discussing it in the next meeting. And that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Board. Any questions for our treasurer? Comments? Thank you very, very much. Okay, now we need to move to the regular agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Helen for 7A. Well, I guess you're going to read it first, Mr. Saldiva. But
Yes, just for the record, there's no consent agenda. Regular agenda, item A, MDX procurement contract number ITB 18-06, MDX work program number 30056.060, construction services of the civil infrastructure modifications for toll zones on State Road 874, State Road 878, and State Road 924. Lowest bid, $2,452,459.57. Approval of contract award.
is there a motion to approve this? Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Second? Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, it's open for discussion. Helen?
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the resolicitation for construction services for the civil infrastructure modifications for toll zones on State Road 874, 878, and 924. We released an invitation to negotiate and received two bids from Condote America and Halley Engineering Contractors. Both bids were considered compliant, and their bid packages were open on April 6th. Halley Engineering Contractors was the lowest bidder with a bid of $2,452,459.57, which was below the corrected engineer's estimates. The engineers did perform an analysis of the bid and found it to be reasonable and within industry standards. And therefore, staff is recommending the award of the contract to Halley Engineering Contractors, the responsive and the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This contract has a 15% small business participation requirement, and although it didn't have a local business participation requirement, Halley Engineering is a certified local business, and the contract time is 211 calendar days. The budget for this project is budgeted in our approved 5-year work program.
Thank you, Ms. Cordero. And as we said in the committee meeting, thank you for your expediency in turning this around so quickly. I'll open it up to the board for any questions or discussion. None? We'll call for a vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walters.
We rejected this a couple of months ago, right, Helen?
Correct.
How many applicants did we have back then?
We had 2, and 1 was deemed non-responsive, so we were left with 1.
On the memo from EAC Consulting, it states that there was an error, that the unit price was incorrectly identified as $3.23 per light pole assembly.
Correct.
Didn't I see the same language in the one we rejected 2 months ago?
No, sir.
Yep.
Our engineer's estimate did not include this, this error that was included in this one.
There was an error in this one, but it wasn't in the first one?
No, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I thought that I had seen this language before. Okay, that's my only question.
Now I'm going to go back and check. But no, sir.
Mr. Walters? Anyone else? Then I'm calling for a vote. All those in favor? Against? If Mr. Halley is here, congratulations. Item 7B, please.
Item B, MDX procurement contract number MDX 18-03. MDX work program not applicable. Cooperative purchase agreement on the School District of Palm Beach County, contract number 14C-33W for the expansion and upgrade of the MDX access control system, not to exceed $417,000. Approval of CPA execution.
Thank you. Mr. Claudio de la Feria will be sitting in for Juan Toledo, who's up in North Carolina doing a presentation for the IBTTA. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good afternoon, Chairwoman and board members. This item is to upgrade all the cameras and the access control system for the headquarters and all our plaza and shelter facilities, including the park and ride facility. In August 2014, MDX approved an advertisement of an ITB to upgrade this very system. However, all the bids significantly exceeded the engineer's estimate, and ultimately all the bids were rejected, and this project was put on hold. But due to the recent decision for MDX to take ownership of the park and ride, this issue resurfaced, and we needed to procure a contract to get the access control, as the access control was originally was supposed to be provided by the county when they took over the facility. As such, doing some research, we found the opportunity to piggyback on a competitively procured contract with Palm Beach Schools. They have a contract currently with Hope Sierra, which produces the very system that we need. We've been in coordination with the county, and they use the very same system that we use, which is the AgMed symmetry system, which is the same thing that we were intending to implement here at the headquarters. And this actually is a great benefit because since the county bus drivers are going to be using the facility, it doesn't require us to issue new cards to all the county bus drivers. We can just program their current cards to access our facilities and vice versa. So this actually works quite well with the system. And the cost that is included right now with the piggyback is actually less than with the lowest bid in the bids in 2014, including the park and ride.
Oh, that's always good news. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Second, Mr. Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. Always great to save some money. Thank you. Item C.
MDX procurement contract number RFQ 16-06. MDX work program number 50001.050. Construction, engineering, and inspection services for the Dolphin Station Park and Ride Transit Terminal Facility, $291,814.06. Approval of supplemental agreement number 3.
Yes, so this item is essentially to amend the contract for the construction, engineering, and inspection services for the Dolphin Park and Ride. This goes hand in hand with the latest time extension that was granted on the project for the contractor side for the design build. Essentially, there was 2 issues that affected the timely completion of the project slightly. One of them was Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma had both direct and indirect impacts on the facility. Obviously, the direct impacts of the hurricane itself, and 2, a lot of the relocation crews for FBL and AT&T were scheduled to do a relocation work, which falls within the critical path of the project. However, many of them were tied up, their crews in Puerto Rico and elsewhere in the state, so they couldn't, we were kind of on the back burner to perform a lot of those relocations, but now they're back on site. So that was one of the delays that the project had. The other was there was some challenges that we had to overcome with the building department, with the county regarding the permitting. There was an issue with the threshold inspector. They ultimately required us to have a threshold inspector that was not part of the design build firm. It had to be separate. So as such, this is not only recommending to increase the CEI contract to the limiting amount of $291,814.06, but it also reduces the CEI's scope slightly, and as such, it reduces their LB and their SB participation very slightly. The threshold inspector was originally by the contractor, and we were doing oversight as part of our CEI contract of this threshold inspector. Now that we've taken out the threshold inspector and it's a separate entity, we no longer need those services. That's why you see a slight reduction in the LB participation.
Thank you. Motion? Thank you. Let's just.
I wanted to switch off. All these items from
Any questions, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Oh, wait a second, I'm so sorry. Got to go faster, Mr. Walters.
I'm pretty clear on why the 111 days are being added, but I'm really not as clear on why the 292,000. Is that for the threshold inspection?
No, that it's in general to carry the staff the additional time required due to the extension of time of the contract.
I mean, because the staff was idle, they still had to pay them?
They weren't necessarily idle. They were doing other work that was non-critical, but because the project got extended, this essentially extends the staff.
Is there any other questions?
No time on the
discussion?
contract, correct.
Favor? Any opposed? Passed unanimous also. Thank you. Item D.
MDX purchase of LED roadway lighting luminaires, not to exceed $1 million. Approval of purchase order for LED roadway lighting luminaires.
Claudio, you're on again.
This is for the purchase of the LED. This is part of our conversion from high-pressure sodium lights on our highway system to LED lights. This is essentially a not to exceed of $1 million. We did a couple reviews with our engineering folks, and we narrowed down, we did an engineering analysis and narrowed down basically and selected Lumca Ovali LEDs, which are currently on the APL. And the reason we chose these lights is because they are essentially a plug and play, and they meet or exceed the photometrics that we currently have on our highway system. They do not require any hardware installation. It's literally a plug and play of the luminaire. These are the lights that were selected and are currently being installed on 836, 28, and 29 job. And essentially what we'd like to do is purchase the lights to continue the conversion of 836 West basically into the extension. So it would go from the terminus of the 29 job moving westward to 137th Avenue. That would require only 350 lights. However, we would get a significant price drop if we purchase 500 or more lights. So since we want to do an ultimate conversion of the entire system, we're looking to purchase up to $1 million, which would basically we'll have spares, and we'll hold them until next year when we represent this item for the rest of the system to use as the balance for next year's system. So this conversion provides essentially three key benefits. One is a net savings of almost $140,000 a year just in electricity and light bills. Two, the long-term maintenance of the product. A normal high-pressure sodium light is about 20,000 hours of use. These LEDs, you can get up to 100,000 hours of use, so there's a significant increase in durability. And lastly, they're smart lights, or smart lights. They can actually talk to each other, and they can identify when one is down, and we can see them without having to go onto the field to know if a luminaire is down, which it helps in our effectiveness in getting the lights back up.
Questions for
Yeah,
Claudio?
two things that I'd
Lorenzo?
like to also have him address, because that's what we heard at committee. The reason why you started looking at this is because the company that you were using, they were no longer manufacturing. I'd like for you to explain that. And also, when you say next year, what do you mean specifically? What do you say we're going to do next year? What
Yeah.
does that really mean?
Okay, so the first one is the high-pressure sodium lights. The current manufacturer that we are currently using is no longer going to be manufacturing these lights. They're replacing them with LEDs, essentially. And the second, the second item was, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
You said next year.
Oh, next year. It would be next fiscal year when we decide to do the rest of the system, 874, 878, and 924.
That's what I wanted to hear, was actually, what do you mean the rest of the system?
Yes.
And when does 112 come into that?
That will also be next year. That would actually be the first project we do next year.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. What next year is defined, and it's those. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, they all passed. Okay, now we're moving to item E. Marie, before we go into that, I have a real quick question. At committee meeting, I had tasked you to please look into a discount for our active duty military folks here in South Florida. Could you give us a report?
we're still evaluating that, but we're looking at maybe possibly a reimbursement program, something to that extent. But we'll give you a full report next month. But I think, you know, it's something we can structure.
Very much. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, we'll go into item E. Marie, you'll be,
You want me to read it in the record?
yeah.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Non-peak pilot program for MDX tolls, as discussed at the joint FPP and OECI committee meeting on April 13th, 2018.
So this is the a rate reduction pilot program. Several months ago, we were asked by the committee as well as the board to look at various programs. One of the program was a monthly pass program. The second program was a non-peak hour reduction rate program, and that had 4 separate scenarios. This item has been presented at several board meetings and at several committee meetings. At the last committee meeting, even though we didn't have quorum, we did thoroughly discuss it. The consensus at that meeting was that the monthly pass had a very low participation rate, as 77% of our users, our SunPass users, pay $50 or less on a monthly basis. So they felt that the monthly pass was not something that would attract a lot of participation. We evaluated the non-peak hour program, and there was 4 separate scenarios that we had our traffic and revenue consultants evaluate. We had the 7-day-a-week reduction from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. They also looked at all day on Saturday and Sunday. And then they looked at Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. through 5 a.m., and all day on Saturday and Sunday. And then the 4th scenario was Monday through Friday, midday from 9:30 to 3 p.m. After much discussion, I believe the committee had a preference for scenario 1 and scenario 3. Scenario 1 was the 7-day-a-week from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., and scenario 3 was from all day on Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. There was an agreement among the committee members that the rate reduction should be about 5%, and depending upon the scenario, the cost is anywhere from $450,000 or $1.9 million on an annual basis. There is an additional $750,000 of a cost to update the signage on the roadway.
You're a second, Mr. Meyer. Thank you. Open for discussion.
Madam Chair. I like the monthly pass. And my reasoning is, I mean, even though you may not have a lot of people that it's going to benefit, that they're probably the people that are complaining the most. And so it's also a way to make sure that, hey, I paid my monthly, it's a monthly, is that $75 a month or a year?
It's $50 a month.
A month.
But if I could turn your attention to the presentation that's attached to the agenda.
Okay.
In addition to the monthly pass, based upon the low penetration rate, participation on it, there was a higher annual cost. So if we did a $50 monthly pass, you would get 51,000 users that would participate, and you would get a cost of about $12.9 million of reduction of revenue. So we also evaluated the revenue impact as well. So you get a small percentage of people that participate, but the revenue impact was very high. And I believe that is on page, they're not numbered. The agenda, the item before you is, those were the scenarios, but I don't believe, again, there was an agreement of which scenario to select.
We're going to discuss it.
If I may, the page that you were referring to is page 5, if you count from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair. So Marie, I kind of like the monthly pass also. And the reason is because these are the users that are the most, that are paying the most, and they'll probably have a higher complaint rate. And if we look at I mean, we can play with the numbers. These are just calculations, but it doesn't mean that these have to be the numbers, right? So if we take the loss of revenue of $12.9 million and divide that by 51,000 people, these people are paying, aside from $50 a month, these people are paying $70 a month in tolls because they're paying another $253 a year. So the average toll for these customers is at least $70. And it probably have some outliers that are even paying $300 a month. So these are the people that call in and legitimately complain about how much their total toll rates are. And 51,000 people, although on our user base might be a smaller impact, it's not a negligible number. It's 51,000 people that are.
So is the revenue impact is $12.9 million.
And so the sliding scale, if you went from 50 to 60 or to 59 or to 65, these are just numbers that we can, that are directionally indicating the loss of revenue.
If you look at the chart,
right,
if the previous chart,
yeah,
and what you really have is 8,400 would pay between $75 and $90 an hour. Now, I mean, $75 and $90 a month, 50 to 75 is about 34,000. We make the assumption that we don't know whether these are commuters or not, or whether these are Uber drivers or, you know, people are taking various trips on the roadway.
Nothing wrong with Uber drivers, by the way. Right? So I think that's the point. The point is that one of the conversations regarding addressing some of the complaints from our user base is that there's a headline that says, I pay $500 a month in MDX, at MDX tolls. That takes away this line because you have the option of buying your monthly pass. So that would be my contribution to the conversation.
Anyone else? Mr. Meyer?
So what I understand is board member Board moonlights as an Uber driver. Is that what I heard? I'm dying to do that. My wife just won't let me.
Well, if you looked at my car, there's an iPad, and I've been, and it's like a station wagon. So people say, "Are you Uber driving?" I have been told that before. So yeah, nothing wrong with those guys. The gig economy is alive.
So I'm not opposed or overly in favor of the monthly pass. There's just a lot of questions that I guess over time we'll address. But my question is more related to this 5% reduction that legislatively is requesting us. How, if we look at the non-peak pilot program specifically, how does that affect that 5%? And do we add on top of that 5%? I just want to get some clarity with respect to that.
Again, if I go back to the conversation we had a couple months ago, the position that council has given us and pursuant to our transfer agreement, only this board has the ability to set toll rates. So if you choose to set the toll rates and give a 5% or a 10% or whatever discount or provide a monthly pass, it's because the board's doing it. The issue is doing it because the legislature told you. That's where the conflict comes.
Sure.
And that's where the issue of the covenants of the bond trust indenture comes. But the board can do whatever it pleases. And here's, so long as it does it, you know, having all the financial impacts. And that's what we're providing to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, could you address the fact when you were coming up with the idea of the various toll reductions, how that was going to affect the traffic? How?
Yeah. The concept that we looked at is when you look at the sliding percentages and the frequency of trips, we said, okay, we've got our frequent driver program, our cashback program, that deals with the most frequent of users. Not to let a cat out of the hat because you've already got our budget, you'll notice that we actually put a line item budget on for that cashback program. It's not going to be an issue of what's left over at the end. We're actually going to budget it, and we're actually tying it to the savings that we're seeing from the consolidated back office. So that's in your budget package for next month's discussion. So the way we looked at it is we've got a program that deals with the most frequent of users. If they sign up, they get a discount. It's gone up to 30%. That this program of the off-peak is really dealing with the infrequent user. It's also envisioned to try and push some of the people that use the highways in the peak periods off of the peak periods? Would somebody do deliveries in the evening? Would somebody make a trip in the weekend rather than doing, during the weekday? Would the pricing change the usage? I will tell you that I know that our traffic and revenue consultant has looked at this, and these are impacts. It is my belief in Miami-Dade County, an urbanized area, that there is such a latent demand for traffic. Everything is so congested that as people leave the peak hours to take off-peak hour trips, that capacity is going to be consumed by someone else who fills it. So that's why we said, let's look at this as a pilot, because maybe the percentage, and I think Secretary Wolf mentioned it when we had the conversation, let's start off small, see what impacts it has, and maybe increase the percentage as we know what this impact is going to do, and maybe play with the percentage to get the balance that we really want for the infrequent of users, which is what this particular program would benefit the most. So that's why we made the recommendation for 5% and why we looked at the different scenarios.
So if I understand this correctly, there's a motion and there's a second on the floor to approve the non-peak at 5%, but it doesn't address which scenario.
You haven't picked a scenario, correct?
So that would have to be an amendment to the motion, correct?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Board.
So when I looked at the non-peak hours program, let's look at the first scenario. So it has a cost of a reduction of revenue of $544,000. It'll cost MDX $750,000 to implement. It'll benefit 220,000 people. If you divide the 454,000 by the 222,000, on a yearly basis, it changes your MDX toll rates by $2 a year. And those $2 are going to be bundled inside of a SunPass bill, and you're not going to know that you actually got $2. I think that if you're making a choice about not spending your most valuable resource, which is time, you're going to avoid traffic hours, and you're just going to pursue the times if you have discretion in terms of your time usage. But if you have to be at the Winn-Dixie at 9 o'clock in the morning, you can't tell your boss, I'm going to choose a different schedule because I just received a $2 incentive on a yearly basis from MDX to go from to show up from 9 o'clock in the morning to a non-peak hour of 11 o'clock in the morning. I think that the incentives in time are there already, and I also think that if you were to look for an economic benefit, instead of spending gas on the highway for an hour, just the gas savings alone of choosing, and maybe Secretary Wolf can add to this conversation, of choosing to go into a time zone that has less traffic is a much bigger incentive than the $2 a year that you would yield in savings. So being that it's going to affect a number of people that are probably not going to be aware of it, that it's going to cost more money than what it saves, that our customers are not going to be aware of it, it seems to me that it's from a revenue perspective, I'm sorry to say, but it's immaterial from the institution's perspective, $500,000 over or under. But, and then I look at the same program and the same arguments come through. Instead of being it will become also $2 on a yearly basis for that million customer. And it is going to cost $750,000. So I don't know what we're trying to achieve. It is not an economic incentive to change behavior. Nobody is going to change their pattern of consumption on the roads for a savings of $2 a year. I don't believe that. So I don't know what it is that we're trying to achieve with this objective.
Board. Mr. Wolf.
I pretty much agree completely with your remarks, and I would point out a parallel, which is we have people that are willing to pay $10 to be in the express lanes and save 10 minutes. And that's what the numbers are. And they might be surprised if you pointed that out to them. Because if you ask them, well, do you value your time at $1 a minute? That's what you paid to be in the express lanes. And I think you're right. They see the time more than they see the money. Some of the members of this board expressed, really, you can go online and see your SunPass line item, you know? Even our members here don't do that. So do you get a return for this? And I also picked up on the $750,000 to do signing. I'm not sure what that's for. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. Probably it came out then. But that's a large upfront cost for a program that, if we go with scenario one, is less than that per year. I don't know why you need signing. If people learn about the program and sign up for it, they know they're eligible or not. But it's too small for the effort, and I don't think it will change behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mayor Jimenez.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think that it's worth the effort. The one thing that will reduce congestion on the roads is actually increasing the ratio of passengers to cars. That is the one thing that will really do it. So in other words, we have like maybe 1.1 passenger per car right now. If we can increase that to 1.4, we have no more congestion. So how do we incentivize that? That's easier said than done. I mean, we've tried, high occupancy vehicles, et cetera, and they go for free, and they still don't do it, okay? So I tend to think that this is not, the $2 a year, it's not worth even the cost of implementing it, so.
Time or the effort.
But can we keep on working and trying to figure out how to put more people in cars? I mean, I'm not saying more cars, I said more people in the cars that we have, because that is one of the ways that we can reduce traffic congestion.
Time is what is more precious to the commuter, and I think the investment of over $45 million on our XT lanes, we actually got approval from the federal government to actually paint the pavement red. I think when people see that if you are in a express bus or some kind of a more than one passenger vehicle, you're going to save significant time during the rush hours. I think that is the biggest incentive that we can give. We've made that investment. These were exercises we did, theoretical exercises, and we wanted to look at the data, and I think the data proves that the significant amount of customers that we have do not spend a significant amount of money on our system. So when you start looking at the numbers, they don't add up to huge amounts over the year. I think the cashback program is the one that has affected the people the most, and that's why you see so many people sign up. I think to the dismay of many, they don't spend enough to qualify at $2 a week. And that's been an interesting conversation with the public.
Mayor Jimenez.
On the cashback program, why do we make people sign up?
When we first created the program, the intent of it was to reduce our operating costs and to gain information from our customers. We didn't have a way to communicate with our customers. This effort that we've done with the Kendall Parkway was partly in part because we gathered the information from our cashback. So when we have them sign up, number one, we want them to be in good standing for SunPass. That reduces our operating cost. That's how we sold the program to the rating agencies. That was an operating efficiency that would reduce our operating costs. That's how we did it. So that's what it's achieved. We've actually gotten a database of our customers.
But as you recall, we didn't have access to SunPass, so,
No.
we just get a transponder number. We wouldn't know, who to
the
send a
person
check
was.
to and so forth.
So is that true right now?
That is true.
So right now, you can't get the access to the SunPass to say, okay, this is what this person.
Unless you register with MDX, the SunPass belongs to the state of Florida. Now, moving forward, once we go to the consolidated back office, I believe we do have access.
Yes, and we will see a significant amount of savings in our operating cost, which is reflected in our budget, and that's why we want to make the cashback program a line item, not below the bottom line.
But then, once we have that information, then can we get rid of the sign-up and just basically people that are above a certain threshold get some kind of money back, a rebate?
I think we need to do an analysis before we blanket make that statement. I think we'd have to look and see what the magnitude is.
Well, it would be the same pot. More
Yes.
people would get maybe,
It'd actually be bigger.
No, the pot of money?
Well,
No, the pot for the cashback is the same.
but your
right?
population changes.
The population may change, that's true.
Correct.
Okay,
I think-
you're
I
probably
think-
going to get if it's automatic, you get less, but you get more checks out there, okay, to folks, they're getting a rebate, okay?
Correct.
With the information that we're going to get from the consolidated back office, we can absolutely look at doing it automatic maybe having them do a check mark. Everything is the same, nothing changed, move forward.
I think one of the things that we looked at various programs around the country. When customers didn't register for the program, they necessarily didn't feel that they got a discount. The fact that they were reminded that they registered for it, they realized they got a discount. So we were looking at doing an automatic on their SunPass, and they didn't even realize they even got a discount.
Could I disagree with you?
Absolutely.
You know how many times I get people stopping me on Publix and say, gee, thanks for the $100 check that you sent? They didn't have to register for it, okay? We give about $4.5 million back to seniors that are below a certain income. They don't register for it. We already have the database. We give it to them. I got a lot of people calling saying thank you, and I'm sure that the commissioner does the same.
Just quickly, to add to the mayor's questions, I actually asked that question about 2 years ago when we were rolling it out, and the consolidated back office was going to allow us to gather that information, but the follow-up question is when?
The go-live date on the consolidated back office right now is May 28th. I have a conference call every Friday afternoon with the Turnpike team, and for the last 3 weeks, it's moved out a week, it's moved out a week, it's moved out a week. So our expectation is July 1st, and that's why we put it into our budget. If it happens before, great, but I'm not holding my breath until July 1st.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question. Marie, when I look at the monthly pass, and I look at the $50, and I look at the 51,000 people, and the estimated loss of revenue is 12.9 million, did we take into consideration the percentage of users that are already getting a rebate within that population? No. So it'd be interesting to look at, of the $8 million or $7 million, what's the number for 2018-19? For the rebate,
We about $5 million left.
$5 million. It'd be interesting to look at, if we had this program in place, how many of those users would be captured within the $5 million budget item that is already in place, as opposed to the $12.9 million that appears here. It'd be interesting to see what the net real effect would be. Because I think that our population that applies is about 80-some thousand, right? That qualifies for the rebate. And this number is 51,000. I don't know, but I think it'd be worthwhile for an appropriate discussion to have that at least consideration.
That's something that we could certainly look into. And I think I just pulled up the chart showing the distribution of customers and revenue by the different payment categories we studied for the monthly pass. I think that the customers who do receive a discount are actually fairly evenly distributed across that continuum. And but that's something we can certainly look further into. Thank you.
So just a clarification, you want us to look at netting, so to eliminate the frequency program to see what the net effect would be, so we would just have a monthly pass. So we would eliminate the frequency program.
No. So a customer that, what would be for a customer that's spending more than $50 a month, 600 plus a year, they have a percentage that is already rebated, right? So that the real effect on a $12.9 million reduction will be mitigated by an amount that will be less than the $5 million. Yes. So that we might be able to put together the sliding scale. It might be, instead of being 50, it might be $59 a month. And with the credit back that we're getting from the rebate program, then the net effect might be a more manageable number for this board to consider. But I think that ultimately it will mitigate the feeling that our customers have that they're paying an inordinate amount of dollars every month. And that will, again, accomplishes that, right? We take that headline away from our user base.
Mayor Manning.
Okay, I'm looking at the $75 pass, and the loss of revenue is $4 million, and yet we're going to rebate $5 million. You say it was 16,000.
Transponders.
Okay. How many people do we rebate money to?
Last year was 87,000.
87,000. So what are they paying? I mean, what is the threshold?
The threshold is $1,000. It's $100 or more.
$100 a month?
No, a year.
A year?
Yes.
We're rebating money for people that with $100 a year?
Spend $2 a month, whatever, $2 a week, you qualify. So if you spend $100 or more on an annual basis, if you look at the distribution chart, most people spend less than $50 a month.
No, but you're saying up to $100 a year.
Yes.
What's the rebate on $100?
Depends upon what the percentage is, $20, $30. I think one year we gave 23%, so it's $22.
And your rebate is based on what you spent, right?
Our rebate
So
is,
if I spend $1,000,
You're back to 120.
I get $220 back.
that is correct. And we see that a lot of small businesses, a lot of small repair trucks, it's got to be a two-axle vehicle that's a SunPass customer. So the average customer that registers, I think, is somewhere around $55 to $60 that they got back, rebated back last year. You had, obviously, people on the upper end where they had, trucks and they were small businesses and they got $400 or $500 back.
Yeah, I'd like to see the different, there's an average, and I think there's a mode. I'd like to see that scale,
Okay.
okay? Yeah, the distribution curve.
I believe we presented it in September's meeting when we declared the rebate.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, question. Board Member Board, I don't know, your comment about we can then solve the issue with respect to people maybe not understanding what they're paying for MDX by the monthly pass or kind of eliminate that sense of outrage. I think in the same vein, it could even exasperate that feeling, because if I pay $50 a month for this pass, again, it needs to be clearly communicated. We don't clearly communicate today if you're on an MDX roadway, and I've been saying that for the last 2 years on this board. So if we roll out a monthly pass, we need to roll out a significant marketing campaign of MDX, whether it's painting the expressways green and everyone knows it as the Greenway. Because if you're paying $50 and you still have that same mindset, and you get a bill and you're still having to pay SunPass because you all pay it together, it's going to create, it may create chaos.
Let me offer you a suggestion. When
Sure.
you see the bill, you're going to see MDX $50. And you're going to see everybody else. I think it is going to create chaos on the other side of the ledger. Because you're going to see that you're only spending these amount of dollars at MDX. And you're going to wonder, well, what else is there? And that'll be clearly segregated. There are already systems like the Key Biscayne toll roads where they charge a monthly rate, and it's on their SunPass bill, and they know this item is this. Even though everything is itemized, I think that it will no longer be one SunPass umbrella. It'll be MDX. If you have I use the airport a lot, so I see all my airport entries going in and out. So, I am able to discern what I spend where. So
My only comment to that is if they read it. I don't disagree.
I agree.
So-
That's true.
Board members,
Good
we'll
point.
bring the analysis back, we'll bring the distribution curve, and I will also remind, we asked this question of our customers. We polled about 40,000 people who are our frequent customers, and overwhelming, they didn't want to pay a monthly pass of $100. That's the question we asked. It was about 75% didn't want to front the money for a monthly pass. We can always look at numbers below that and see what impact it would have, and then offset it to the cashback. So we'll bring it back to the board.
So we're going to table the motion. Time. I just want to make sure, first, thank everybody for being here. We had a quorum. That makes me very happy. I hate when we have meetings that we don't have quorum. We try to work around everybody. But please remember that we have a meeting, two important meetings on May 22nd. We have the budget workshop, and we're also going to discuss the financial plan and the proposed rates for the Kendall Parkway. So on that note, happy spring to everybody. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?